Mr. President, last month I launched a new series of floor speeches to recognize what is going on with the prescription drug pricing across America. When you ask the American people about the economic things that are on their mind, it's number one, the cost of prescription drugs. Number two, have I saved enough money for my retirement? It really gets to the heart of concerns that families have every day, because each one of us knows that the cost of prescription drugs are going up, and we also realize how vulnerable we may be as individuals if one of those drugs is a matter of life and death. I came to the floor last 2 weeks ago to talk about the cost of insulin. 7.5 million diabetics across America have seen dramatic increases in the cost of insulin, increases which can't be justified because the same companies, American companies, selling the same drugs in Canada do it for a fraction of the cost. A fraction of the cost. The Americans pay outrageous prices. A drug like Humalog, a form of insulin, one of the most popular forms of insulin, costs $329 a dosage in the United States. 20 years ago, it was about $29. It's gone up in price 35 times in that 20-year period of time. How much does the exact same drug that costs $329 in the United States cost in Canada, made by the same company? $38. So you look at that and you think, there's something wrong here. The pharmaceutical industry is not focusing on giving American consumers a break. And what I want to talk about today goes to an issue which is hard to believe, but true. A few years ago, the New York Times reported that nearly $3 billion worth of drugs were wasted each year. These are not ordinary drugs, these are cancer drugs used in chemotherapy. Medicare, Medicaid, and private health insurers spend billions of dollars on medications. Many of them are literally thrown in the trash. How could that possibly be? You see, for many of the most expensive drugs, like new cancer treatments, the pharmaceutical industry produces them in a one-size-fits-all container, a single-use vial that a physician has to draw from to give a treatment to a patient. The dosage for the patient in the cancer therapy is based on the patient's size and weight. The problem is that the pharmaceutical industry insists on selling these drugs in excessively large vials that contain dramatically more medicine than the average patient would need. So doctors administer the proper dosage and throw away the rest. Here's a kind of graphic to illustrate what I'm talking about here. Here's why we're wasting billions of dollars each year on cancer drugs. One size does not fit all. This drug, Velcade, the vial size that available is 3.5 milligrams. The patient dose, 2.2. Amount that's left over, 1.3. Going to recycle that? Can't do it. That's the end of it. It's thrown away. In 2016, $300 million was wasted in this way. This vial, the first one here that is produced, is a vial that would apply for a person who is 6'6" tall and weighing 250 pounds, which means our linebacker, Khalil Mack, on the Chicago Bears, God forbid he ever would need it, that would be his dosage size. Most people are not as big as Chicago Bears linebackers. Why is Pharma sending us one vial, take it or leave it? Because they make money. They make money when we buy it and have to throw it away. Takeda Pharmaceuticals sells this drug for those who are suffering from multiple myeloma and lymphoma. As I mentioned, it's for a person who's 6'6" and 250 pounds. Takeda made $310 million in the year 2016 off of unused Velcade that got thrown in the trash. $310 million. What makes this even more appalling is that pharmaceutical industry titans actually sell the same drug in smaller containers in other countries, but not in the United States. Here, we're forced to buy the largest container and throw away the difference. This chart here is an indication The same company, Takeda, that makes Velcade, sells this drug not in 3.5 milligram vials, as in the United States, but in Europe in 1 milligram vials. It seems like a simple thing, doesn't it? That you would dispense this drug in a manner so that it's not wasted. Sadly, wasting and throwing away the drug is part of their market strategy. Another Japanese company, Eisai Halaven, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name, sells its chemotherapy drug, Halaven, only in 1 milligram vials in the United States, but sells smaller 0.88 milligram vials in Europe. Merck's immunotherapy drug Keytruda, truly a breakthrough, amazing drug. The research was done by taxpayers at the National Institutes of Health, which led to the development of this drug. But they sell this drug Keytruda only in 100 milligram vials in the United States, but 50 milligram vials in Europe. In 2016, Merck made $200 million on Keytruda, this life-saving drug that was thrown away. In 2016, I asked the Inspector General of Health and Human Services about this waste of taxpayers' money. The Inspector General uncovered, that Medicare spent $195 million in just 1 year on 20 identified drugs for medication that was thrown away. That year, Takeda received $47 million in taxpayer funding for amounts of Velcade thrown in the trash. It wasn't alone. Genentech's Rituxan, one of the most common cancer medications, only comes in vials that are 100 milligrams or 500 milligrams. Medicare wasted $10 million on Rituxan in 2013 that was thrown away. It's for this reason that I'm presenting my second Pharma Fleecing Award to Takeda, Eisai, Merck, and Genentech. Patients in America should not face higher drug costs because these pharma fleecers choose to sell their expensive cancer drugs in excessively large drug vials that necessarily are going to be wasted. 2 weeks ago, I teamed up with Republican Senator Rob Portman of Ohio to introduce the Refund Act. Simple bill that Senator Portman and I have introduced, and I hope others will join us. It says that taxpayers will only pay for the drug that is given to a patient, not for the part that's thrown away. Medicare already tracks how much of this medication is being discarded. So the Refund Act simply requires Medicare to determine how much was wasted and to recoup the money from the drug companies. We then provide a portion of that money back to seniors for the 20% co-insurance they have to pay for the drugs. Important point. When Medicare is paying for these drugs and a lot are being thrown away, the seniors are still paying their 20%, even for the drug portion that's being thrown away. So Rob Portman's bill, the one I've introduced with him, would say that the money recouped from the drug companies will go back to the benefit of these seniors. Under our new bill, this pharma fleecing from drug vial waste will soon come to an end, so that not just the patients, but our government will save money. And remember the bottom line. When you ask the major health insurers today, what is driving the cost of health insurance premiums? They say, Senator, prescription drug pricing is number one. Blue Cross Blue Shield, based out of Chicago, when I sit down with them, say we spend more money on prescription drugs than we do on inpatient hospital care. To give you an idea, it's out of sight. You can't turn on a television set, particularly if you're over the age of 50, without being bombarded with all these drug ads, right? You've heard them over and over again. The number one drug that's being sold on television today? Humira. Humira. What is it for? Psoriatic arthritis. Serious. If you have that arthritis, that may be a lifesaver for you. But it's now being sold for that little red patch on your elbow called psoriasis. Interesting. Do you know how much Humira costs each month? $5,000. $5,000. I have legislation that would require these drug companies to advertise the cost of their drugs on television. They tell us everything else, don't they? They tell us if you're allergic to Humira, don't take Humira. I've never understood that warning. And they tell us everything under the sun, but they never mention the price. So what I want to do is to get the price out in front of the public. Let them know what being perfect in a swimsuit is going to cost you per month. You know, from my point of view, there are people who need these drugs desperately, and we ought to try to get the prices within their reach. But for those who are overusing and abusing the airwaves of America to advertise drugs, to try to push doctors into writing the scripts, even when it's not necessary, we've got to come to grips with this. If we don't, we are not going to have a serious effort to reduce the cost of health insurance and the health care costs that face our nation. Mr. President, I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of quorum.